Hi everyone, Demir here from Westmount Wealth Management. Today we're tackling one of those words everyone uses but few define the same way, risk. The lack of a common definition is perhaps what makes personal finance just that, very personal. Ask 10 people what risk means to them and you'll probably get 11 different definitions. To most portfolio managers, risk is a number. It's volatility, beta, drawdown, pretty nerdy statistical stuff. To an investor, however, risk is a lot more personal. It might be the fear of a sudden large unforeseen expense, not being able to send your kids to their target school, or lying awake at night thinking, does my retirement plan still work despite all the market volatility? At Westmount, we live in both worlds, the math as well as its human implications. Our job is to translate one into the other. Picture two people on the same ship. Up on the bridge, the captain checks the radar and calmly says, 2-meter waves, nothing to worry about, it's all good. Down on the passenger deck, someone grabs the rail thinking, 2 meters? Holy smokes, it feels like 20. That's risk. The same storm can be seen through very different lenses depending on who's perceiving them. For investment managers, risk isn't emotional, it's empirical, it's evidence-based. For example, volatility is the market's heartbeat, how fast and how hard prices move up and down. A calm pulse means smooth sailing. A racing one means turbulence ahead. But here's the twist. Volatility doesn't care whether prices are rising or falling. Even an upward rally shows up as risk. It's like calling both tailwinds and headwinds equally impactful. While that may be technically true, it is not very helpful when you're trying to set a flight path and gauge how much fuel you may need. Managers also track drawdowns, i.e. how deep the market falls before it climbs back up again given different scenarios. Drop 30%, for example, and you'll need a 43% rebound to break even. Drop 50% and you'll need a full 100% to get back to where you started. That's why limiting drawdowns matters. Think of it like flying under the storm clouds. You may move slower, but you'll land smoother. Then there is beta, which measures how much your portfolio moves relative to the market. A beta of 1.2, for example, means you'll swing 20% more than the market for better or worse. Risk can also hide in the fine print. Liquidity risk, for example, is realizing that you can't sell what you own when you need to. Like a crowded theater when everyone's happy until someone yells fire. Concentration risk, on the other hand, is too many eggs in one basket, even if that basket wears a fancy label. Look, ultimately for portfolio managers, risk is architecture. It's something to model, budget, and rebalance. But for our clients, it's the soundtrack of their lives. Thankfully, at Westmount, we're not only portfolio managers, but we're also client-centric planners. As certified financial planners, we understand that clients don't care about standard deviations. They care about being okay. They care about peace of mind. For them, risk is the possibility that the plan doesn't work out, not beating the S&P 500 index, but retiring on time, funding their kids' education, or keeping the family cottage. When we run simulations and say, well, there's an 85% probability of success, that's actually not a math score, it's a life score, a measure of how likely you are to live your plan without major compromises. In that sense, risk isn't volatility, it's actually vulnerability. Markets move in unpredictable ways, but human reactions, those are remarkably consistent. We feel roughly twice the pain from a loss as we do the joy from a gain. That's behavioral risk, the urge to sell low, buy high, or freeze when action is needed most. Remember the Liberation Day tantrum back in April? Well, markets dropped sharply, but recovered almost just as swiftly. Investors who panicked and sold missed that rebound. That's why advisors spend just as much time managing people as they do managing portfolios. And maybe that's how it should be. Look, for a 30-year-old, a bear market is a sale. For a retiree, it's a threat. That's why liquidity, the ability to draw income without selling your depressed assets, is so critical. We often say volatility is temporary unless you need the money now. Aligning your cash flows with your time horizon is the difference between weathering a storm and being stranded in one. It is really important to remember that not all risks shout. Ironically, the most dangerous of them all whispers rather quietly, and that's inflation. It very much erodes our purchasing power over time. While sitting on too much cash can feel safe, over time that safety can become its own risk. Being too cautious can be just as dangerous as being too aggressive. Look, at Westmount, our job is to translate market risk into human language. Risk management isn't about eliminating uncertainty. It's about building resilience around it. We do this by diversifying for market cycles, because different asset classes shine in different weather. We spend a lot of time structuring cash flows intentionally, so short-term needs are insulated from market storms. We guide our clients through emotions, call it behavioral coaching if you will, keeping decisions grounded when headlines are not. Lastly, but perhaps most critically, we reframe risk into goals, not graphs, focusing on life outcomes, not quarterly, portfolio performance. Because at the end of the day, risk isn't the enemy. Misunderstanding risk is what gets you in trouble most of the time. For portfolio managers, risk lives in spreadsheets. For our clients, it lives in their gut. True wealth management lives in between those two things, where analysis meets empathy and numbers meet meaning. At Westmount Wealth, our goal isn't to avoid risk, it's to understand it, harness it, and make sure it's the right kind of risk for the life that you actually want to live and lead. Thank you again for tuning in, and as always, if you have any questions, you know where to find us.